They send our sons to war, a cruel charade, a racket built on blood, where fortunes are made. They lie about the reasons, spin tales so tall, while heroes die for profit and empires fall. Politics a game, a circus of clowns, puppets on strings. They parade through our towns. They distract and divide us with hate as their tool, pitting brother against brother in a world they misrule. When the powers that be warn you not to go beyond the pale, then that's a sure sign there's more to the tale. Their anti-human agenda, it's plain as the day. They view us as bugs in their cold, heartless play. Eat insects, they sneer, while they feast on the land. Depopulation's their goal, with a tightening hand. Civil rights torn to shreds in the name of their peace. A police state rises where freedom's all seized. Gaslight us with propaganda, their lies never end, twisting truth in their grip till our minds start to bend. When the powers that be warn you not to go beyond the pale, then that's a sure sign there's more to the tale. Order out of chaos, their sinister creed. They spark the flames, then offer what we need. Economic stagnation, they choke out our dreams, while divide and conquer rips us at the seams. They fan every fracture, they stoke every fight, left against right, till we're blind to the light. Yet beyond their pale lies the truth they conceal. A world where we're free, where our hearts can still heal. When the powers that be warn you not to go beyond the bay, then boy, then that's a sure sign there's more to the tale. So step past their warnings, their fences, their lies. See the world they've been hiding with wide open eyes. Beyond the pale, where their power grows frail, we'll reclaim our future and truth will prevail.
Welcome, everybody, to a Wednesday night edition of RB Ham Beyond the Pale. I am your host, RB Ham, and joining us is uh, some very special people. We're here to kind of do a show in memoriam. Oh, and I got to do it. My wife will say, "What are you doing?" In memoriam for the great Grizzly Patriot. I'm wearing the hat. Mark Friesen, who passed away a couple of weeks ago. We had his funeral here in town on Monday. And I know, hey Salim, you can check in now. You can turn your camera on. We're ready to roll. And of course, Salim Mansur. All
Hello
three of these
everyone. Hello,
gentlemen,
Bob. Nice to
all
see
three,
you after so long, and hello, Sean.
all three of these gentlemen, my friends, are true Canadian patriots and heroes, and we're here to share some memories of Mark Friesen, and we'll watch a couple of videos. But first, I want to go around. I'll start with Sean, then Salim, and then Bob. Introduce yourself to the audience, how you knew Mark, and any poignant memories you have of him. How about you first, Sean?
Hey, yeah, my name's Sean Taylor. I met Mark in 2019 at the first annual convention of the PPC in Gatineau. And I didn't know who he was. Everyone else seemed to know who he was. And yeah, I wasn't familiar with the show or anything like that. And as we progressed shortly after the first election, and I started, you know, paying closer attention to things and started to coming to stunning realizations about my country and the nature of the troubles that we were in. I reached out to Mark because he seemed to know more than anyone else, and we formed a quick friendship, and we traveled this nation coast to coast several times, trying to spread the gospel. And yeah, we formed a pretty tight bond. He got really sick in 2021, shortly after the election, and I had just been fired from my position as an emergency nurse for the things that I said 5 days after the election. And I had an opportunity to go out and support him while he was in the hospital and in Toronto in the ICU riding a ventilator for about a month and a half.
Yeah.
So I was his personal health advocate, and yeah, we had a pretty strong bond, and he's going to be missed.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so when I got to the church on Monday for the funeral, I've been holding it together pretty good. I hadn't cried or anything. I was kind of wondering what's wrong with me. And I walked into the church. I saw Sean. I went and gave him a hug. He hugged me back, and I just started bawling like a freaking baby. It was embarrassing. But I needed it. I needed it so much. And thank you, Sean, for being there. Sean emceed the funeral. He read the testimonies, introduced everybody. You did flawless. You held it together, incredible. A couple times there, I saw you break a little bit, but
yeah,
you held it together. I mean, I don't know if I could have done it. So thank you for everything you did, Sean, for Grizzly, for the Grizz in his life, and for what you've done since.
It was an honor.
Thank you so much. And Salim, I know you knew Mark very well. Broke a few barriers with him. Any poignant memories of Mark and things he helped you come to reconcile with?
Well, my brother RB and Sean and Bob, every memory of Mark is a treasure and a privilege of the time that we spent together. Ever since he gave me a call during the period before the 2019 election. Those who know something about my background in terms of politics, I was seeking the nomination on the behest of my friends in the party and outside the party in London, in the riding in London for the Conservative Party of Canada. I'd been associated with the Conservative Party of Canada going all the way back to the 1990s with Preston Manning, and that association carried me through the Reform, Canadian Alliance, and then the merger of the Progressive Conservative, the Conservative Party of Canada. So that was the background. And in 2019, People knew that I was running. I don't know how Mark got to know that I was a candidate seeking nomination, and I thought I would have the nomination. But for 1 year, the party kept me hanging, and then Andrew Scheer decided, in his wisdom, that he should expel me, and he expelled me. And the news went wider across the country. National Post, Globe and Mail, and all of these papers talked about it, published it, and I got a call from Maxime that, Salim, you should join me. And of course, I knew Maxime for a decade and more when he was a foreign minister and so on and so forth. So anyhow, I did, and Mark kept calling me, and Mark was jubilant, and we knew that we were going to meet exactly as my brother Sean just mentioned at the convention in Gatineau. That was to be in August. And we were all converging in Gatineau from the 300 and at that time, what was it, Mark? Sorry, Sean, 320 seats across country. Now it is 338 seats. So 320 seats. So candidates were converging. I had my ticket booked, and my team, my core members of my team, booked with me, and we were headed to Gatineau. And on the morning of the convention, around 7 o'clock in the morning, I got the call that I had lost my son up in the mountains in BC, in a collision. And there went my going to Gatineau. I turned around and flew to Kelowna and that part of history. So I missed being with Mark. We had been chatting. We were going to meet, but it didn't happen. Of course, I didn't know Sean, that I had another brother, long before Sean was a glimmer in my parents' eyes. But there it was. And I went to Kelowna, and I spent a week there because of all the protocol that follows after such a death as my son went through. And after the convention, Sean flew to Kelowna and he walked into my hotel, this 6 feet plus guy with a beer hug, I thought it was going to be Mark, but it was Sean, and he was all in his military uniform. And I was taken by surprise because I was in a state of complete, bewilderment and in a different state of mind. But Sean just walked in like a ray of light from Gatineau. Hey, brother, I've heard about this and blah, 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 and hugged me. And he really, really took the time off from his whatever Sean was supposed to do in his military uniform. And he was with me all through the time I was in Kelowna. And he came to my son's funeral and he accompanied me. He went, and I was able to lean upon somebody other than my immediate family who came with me. And I didn't meet Mark, but the relationship had been established. And so 2019, now what it is, 2026, 7 years later, I lost my son and I lose another brother. I still can't get over my son, and I don't think I'll be able to get over my brother, Mark, because during this 7 year period, we bonded in a manner that people of blood bond, but that is tribalism. Our bonding was a bonding of a higher intellect, the intellectual bonding, a kinship of spirit, of mind, in the case of Mark, a warrior. I have never worn a uniform. I have never carried a gun. I don't know anything about that part of the thing. But yes, a warrior for freedom, warrior for peace, warrior for truth, warrior for Canada. So here it is. I mean, our origin, Mark's origin and my origin is 180 degrees apart from completely different point in the compass. But yet, as Canadians, um, you know, destiny and faith and politics brought us together to a platform where we did not need much time to introduce ourselves to each other and why we are together. We instinctively knew why we are together, from the very first conversation. And the joy that radiated from Mark in this relationship. And every time I spoke with him and every time we got together. So that was the beginning. And then we worked together to establish, this was Mark's idea, and I contributed in the writing part of it, that is whatever the technical constitutional part of it, the Forum for Canadian Sovereignty that Mark founded, and I believe the website is still on, but I don't know whether all the stuff that he did with me, is on there. But we created that. We were working on other projects. I joined Sean on some of the trips that Mark and Sean made. I joined them in traveling and talking about Canada, which I hope we will explore a little more down the thing. But in all of this time, the thing that I want to leave behind as a memory was that Mark, again, there was nothing, of course, phony about him. It was all up front, a bear of a man, 6'4" or whatever, 220 pounds. He could have been a boxer. There was nothing phony, and his charisma was that of a leader. Wherever he stood, with whomever he went along, wherever he spoke, a charisma was there that people was just like he was the magnet, and people was just attracted towards him and what he was saying. And what he said was simple, not garnished, not flowery, simple, man to man, man to woman, about the state of affair that had brought him into the public field and why. And that made him connect with the people around him. So those are the memories I will cherish. It is like transforming Mark into a character in a play or in a novel. That is Mark, and he will remain that as long as I am around. Mark Friesen.
Oh, and so we'll come to you, Bob Blayone. Please tell the audience quickly who you are and how you met Mark and how he helped you come to your current realization of the state of Canada we were in. Were you fully red-pilled by the time you met Mark, or did he help you along?
Well, when I met Mark, I'll just begin by saying when I walked away from the United Conservative Party of Alberta through the COVID wars, I'll call it, I walked away asking myself the question, what in the hell is going on? I knew there was something bigger at play, and Mark was instrumental in helping open my eyes and my mind. And I wanted to actually open by saying, through all of these last 6 and some years, the most profound thing for me has been my spiritual journey and meeting gentlemen like yourselves. Salim, you and I talked many times, and I appreciated our conversations. I always appreciated Mark's perspective and his calmness and his peacefulness. There's no question that he was called to do what he did. And Sean, Mark's memorial was very impactful on myself, and as I'm sure you've heard from many other people. I just wanted to thank you for that. And that was a celebration of life that a man like Mark should be celebrated, and not just for one day, for the rest of our lives. I'll certainly never stop talking about him and the impact that he made on me. I we'll never forget the years walking through the freedom movement with men like Mark, how he always spoke truth with a passion and a love and a kindness that it's hard to match that. And his level of patience, he was one of the first guys I said, being hit upside the head by truth through all things COVID, and meeting a gentleman like Mark and understanding that he was awake for far more years than I was, and the level of patience that takes to stay peaceful and calm and just spreading the truth and opening up hearts and minds is just incredible. So Mark made a big impact in my life, and I know I talked to many people like you guys do, and he really impacted the hearts and minds of many Canadians and beyond. So I respected him a lot, and I'm grateful to have met him and called him a friend and a brother in arms. He'll be in my heart for the rest of my life.
Okay, guys, I've taken my face off the screen because I'm going to start the screen share now. I want people to see this. This is his Facebook page, Mark My Mind. His wife, Yannicka, had to start a new Facebook page for him because for some reason, after he passed, a few days after he passed, the Facebook took down his Mark Friesen page. And it was, I don't know why, because I know of other people who have been deceased and they keep their Facebook pages up. So there must have been I'm not going to say what, but anyway, Yannicka decided she put a Mark My Mind Facebook page up so anybody can go to it, just Mark My Mind, and watch all the great, all these tributes pouring in. It's just incredible to go through from everybody he touched, and it's amazing. It goes on forever and ever. There's a picture of you, Bob, and there's a picture of you, Bob, with Artur Pawlowski and Mark, and Artur loved Mark, and Mark loved Artur because they were also kindred spirits. they both stood up on their hind legs and said and accurately called what was going on during COVID a Gestapo tactic. The whole thing. I mean, it was great to see when they got together. There's more pictures, of course, and there's some great tributes pouring in, and the words are so wonderful. There's another one by Bob. I want to read this one. This is from a guy named Mo Walker. I'll just see if I can make it bigger. Okay, and this is what he wrote. This photo was taken in March 2021, right in the thick of the pandemic. We traveled to Saskatoon to a rally that Mark and others were holding. I remember feeling so much hope and unity, finally being amongst like-minded people, while Mark was sharing major truth bombs. I attended many events around Alberta to which Mark gave 100% of himself, never asking for anything in return. One such event was in an old barn north of Westlock. Well, actually, I was there too, and it wasn't an old barn. It was actually a converted slaughterhouse. It was made of concrete. All the seats were concrete, and it was colder inside than outside. So we would go outside to warm up. It was incredible. Back when we had to meet in clandestine places to avoid government overreach. In fact, me and Mark did a town hall tour throughout Saskatchewan just before that, and we had to meet in secret in farmers' shops, in corrals and workshops and everything, avoiding police scrutiny to hold these talks with people who were starved for the truth and would flock to these events. And it was all by word of mouth. It was incredible. And Mark would look at me and say, can you imagine, here we are in 2021 in Saskatchewan, and we're sneaking around like we're in East Germany during the 1950s. It was incredible. Dark days for sure. But prior to that, I had stumbled upon a Grizzly Patriot podcast. This podcast was the beginning of my full awakening to the corruption, evil organizations, governments that run our world. Mark woke a lot of us up. I will forever be grateful for you, Mark. You are a true Canadian patriot. That's just one of many. And he touched so many lives. I'm going to stop sharing that. If people want to, because I think it's important, if I know some people would like to watch the whole live stream, here's a YouTube channel. It's at Christ the Healer, LOCC Campus. And you can just probably type into YouTube, Christ the Healer Gospel Church, and this will come up. And you can watch the entire 2 hours and 16 minutes of the funeral / celebration of life. I dare you to try to get by the part when his kids come up to talk to him. I dare you to get by that part without bawling your head off, because that was something. So people, you can seriously think about doing that. Go to that website just to watch it, because I think it'd be good for everybody. I know a lot of people couldn't be there, but wanted to be there and did watch it on live stream. But if you missed it, there's your chance. It's right there. And I'll stop sharing that and go to this one. Now, a lot of people remember Mark for what was happening, what he did for his leadership during the COVID crisis. But he was known before that, and I wanted to share this screen. This is a little, it's just 3 minutes and 31 seconds, but he was the 2019 convoy out to Ottawa, the oil and gas convoy, because around that point, he was one of the very first ones to recognize that our financial, our economic sovereignty was under attack by this globalist agenda. And he was front and center long before anybody else kind of clued into it. He was there. I just wanted to play this so people can watch this.
Individuals can inspire, but it is the millions, it is the people that make change. People, we have to make change now.
The day I shipped out, the numbered a dozen. Upon my return, we're 100 or so. From the coast and from the prairies, I bet they keep coming. Add one more name from Ontario and carry me home down the highway of heroes. People above with the flags flying low. Carry me softly down the highway of heroes. True patriot love, there was never more. I served with distinction, no visions of glory. I served without question, of personal gain. Seek no justification, it's not part of my story, and it offers no comfort to the ones who remain. Just carry me home down the highway of heroes. People above, the flags flying low. Carry me softly down the highway of heroes. True patriot love, there was never more. I took up my vocation, I was called by my nation, without hesitation, my answer I gave. Now I'm not wondering the things that I might have been, are no consolation to the forgotten brave. So carry me home down the highway of heroes, people above, with the flags flying low. Carry me softly down the highway of heroes, true patriot love. There was warriors and we stand on
So I just wanted people to be aware of that he was front and center before COVID. That was the 2019 United Reroll Convoy, the Yellow Vest movement. And that's when he first broke into the consciousness of people who were realizing and waking up for the first time. Like I knew about all this stuff, but until COVID hit, I didn't even know. I didn't know about Mark. I didn't know about the People's Party of Canada. My story is I met him on the streets of Saskatoon here in July of 2020, when because I'm an old time leftist, unionist, trade unionist type, but also from the George Galloway school of I don't believe in open borders because that open borders, the whole situation, bringing in mass immigration actually hurts the working class. It actually hurts unions and stuff. It drives down the wages. It makes us compete for less dollars on the and this being and international banksters want mass immigration because they want to destabilize our society and be able to make us all turn into serfs. They want to get rid of the middle class. So I met him, and I'm from the left. He's from the right. We start talking, and we had some differences, but we had way more in common than what separated us. And that's what really amazed me. And the way he could communicate that. He did, like a lot of people hate him, because of what they think the perception of him. But I knew so many people that probably had a negative impact, a negative idea of him, could sit down with him for 10, 15 minutes and come away going, I may not agree with all of his politics, but this man believes what he's saying and he's got a point. And he made me wake up to certain points of view that I never considered before because I didn't have that information. Like the whole UN agenda, sustainable development stuff sounds good when it's dressed up and brought out to you by the liberal mindset that, it's good for everybody, and they play on your empathy, right? But he saw through all that. But the way he would communicate it was not nasty. It was with love and with he would open his heart to people. We did a rally and went through the Midtown Plaza here in Saskatoon. There's all these students that were just aghast what was happening, and Mark went out of his way to talk to them, to say, look, come here. This is what I want to talk to you. Right? I don't want to just yell and scream and all this stuff. And he would sit them down. He would talk to them and be patient about it. And he said, I love that. I love talking to people who are brought up in this paradigm and be able to talk to them open and hopefully change their minds and just let them know that there's another way of looking at things. He woke up a lot of people is what I'm saying. And do you think that's, I don't know if you knew him before 2019, Sean, but you might, but he did have that ability, and that was pretty amazing. Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, it was just, he was always on mission.
Yeah.
Right? And our missions align, right? We, like I said earlier, we used to discuss, and this is the thing that I miss the most, our talks. Right? Like he knows most of the stuff that I know, and I know most of the stuff that he knows, and we have this shorthand, right? And I don't have those conversations anymore. And when you look at this massive evil conspiracy that's captured the West, and you start to evaluate, it's like, what is the greater evil, right? This thing that we're up against, or the complacency of the average man? And, we both believed that given the proper information, we could shake people out of their complacency. And, we can argue our effectiveness all day. But we moved the chains. We're further ahead today than we were when we started this, right? We probably haven't made the amount of progress that we would like to see. You never do. But we've moved the needle, and I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged by what I see going on today. I think it's going to continue to evolve, and the veil is being lifted, right? Like, this shit is landing on Main Street right now.
Yes.
And people are coming to terms with this stuff. Right? Yeah. The Epstein files. And I've had some conversations with some people that thought I was a nut job for a long time, going, dude, like, you were right. Like, I didn't believe any of it. Like, you were right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just like, we're getting there. We're getting there. And
I mean, he was like, the stuff that's going on now, and I wanted to talk about some stuff that's happened to us now that's out in the full light. The whole MAID program. Remember, he would, even when before the MAID program was ever announced, he talked to me about someday that they're going to have suicides on demand. And I said, "Oh, you're crazy. That's not going to happen. Within a couple of years, we have it." And how did you know that? He said, they talk about it in they're Malthusians. Like, they write books about it. Dennis Meadows, remember that you would often play that video of Dennis Meadows saying there's too many people on the earth, that we have to reduce the population. And then Dennis Meadows would say, and I hope we don't have to do it through tyrannical, forceful methods. I hope we can do it peacefully. And he would look at me after playing the video and say, how exactly do you depopulate 7 billion people off the world peacefully? He would go. And he would talk about, so obviously they're talking about not just war, but we're talking about famine, disease, and then of course around that same time Bill Gates came out with that video talking about how we have to get to net zero. And he would put that thing up, and so one of these things have to get down to zero, and one of them was human population, and people laughed in the audience, and then he said, and a good way to do that is through better food security, blah blah. And then he mentioned vaccines, of course. And oh my God.
I'm in awe of it. Like, look what they've normalized.
I know.
A third of Gen Z were murdered in the womb.
Yeah.
Right? We've got a public education system that sexualizes, confuses, and encourages the mutilation of children, and people still send their kids to school. One of the leading causes of death in our nation is government-assisted suicide, and we sell organs on the international market. Raw milk will land you in jail, but cocaine is legal. Like, it is so insane right now, and it's normalized. And this spiritual blindness that's befallen our nation is just, I
know it leaves you speachless sometimes.
I'm in awe of it.
I want to talk to Salim because, and you can go on. I can share it out. Anybody can see it. Just go to YouTube, the Grizzly Patriot YouTube channel, and his very last interview with Salim is still up there. But it was almost like a Friday. It was a weekly event to show up to Grizzly Patriot channel and watch Salim and Mark talk about the historical perspective about the crisis in Canadian sovereignty that was already well underway. And you're like one of those true intellectual professorial warriors that would be able to break it down for people. And Mark would say, I don't get as many views as I do on some of my more sensational programs. Like when he would do a show about exposing the PCR scam, or he would do a show about the Bill Gates depopulation agenda, stuff like that. He got a lot of views, but when he did one with Salim, he wouldn't get as many views because it slows down, and some people don't have the attention span for that. But he said they're the best shows I do. He said the ones I do with Salim are the best ones. I mean, I got as many views, but they're the best ones. And he sometimes despaired that not enough people were paying attention to Salim, because he said Salim's the smartest guy I know. So I just want to let you know that Mark talked about you like that. So do you have memories of that?
It was soon after the 2019 election, when I came back from BC and got involved in the election. I was divided. I was split whether I should still remain in politics or just hang my hat. And then talking with Mark and talking with other friends, but Mark was also instrumental in more ways than I can count, because we used to have more than a weekly chat. I mean, Mark would be on his truck going somewhere with his whisper tree. In the beginning, I did not know what whisper tree meant.
Tree whisperer.
Then I learned that it was, the sort of business that he did and so on. So he would be on his truck heading off somewhere, and he would call me, and we would spend 15, 20 minutes, whatever Mark had in his mind. And he would then try to discuss with me an issue that he would want to cover in a broader sense on the internet. because he set up the Friday night chat with the Grizzly Patriot. He was the Grizzly Patriot and I was his partner. And Friday chats became, I suppose it became a regular thing across the internet with the PPC, at least with the PPC. People would tune in, people would write to me. Of course, they were writing to Mark and talking about it. So that became a thing. So back to where I was just before the election, I was divided. I just wanted to throw my hat. I didn't have any, at that time, passion anymore after I lost my son. But then talking to Max, people had invested in our campaign. I mean, PPC campaign. I raised a ton of money, and how do I get it all back, and so on and so forth. So it was like I was stuck, I was stalemated, to use a chess metaphor. I was stalemated, and it was Mark's conversation in this period of time that said to me, told me, brought me out that no, I can't get my son back, but I have to carry this mission, and as a Canadian, what we have started, I should finish it off. And so I remained in the campaign and went on. And then after the campaign, Sean was a candidate, Mark was a candidate, I was a candidate, so many other people were a candidate. I don't know if Bob was in any way involved with the PPC effort in his part of the country, because I met Bob after the campaign, 2019 election. So we were reflecting back on this situation. We seemed to be a group of people who had come together in PPC, but we were not that sort of people, at least in my view. We were not that sort of people who took party politics as a tribal issue. You belong to the Liberal Party, hell or high water, I'm going to vote Liberal because my great-grandfather had voted for Liberal, and similarly for the NDP. And that's party politics. That's tribalism in politics. But those of us who came together in the PPC, from whatever background, whatever was our association, in whichever party that existed in 2019 and before, we set it aside. I mean, here is Sean, a man who had put on the uniform for his country, had done 2 tours of duty, in Afghanistan, put his life on the line, and there were many others like him. Mark, coming from law enforcement agency, with the correctional services, not being in any way becoming a professional politician. So what drove us was ideas, our conviction that Canada was at a crossroad, or had arrived at a crossroad, that there had been and is going on, and I think this was a very important factor, of the betrayal by the elites of their country. The academic part of me was that all of these issues were on my table, as both as a person with a history background, and then as an economic background, political economy, all of this thing. One of the classic books in the 1990s was by Christopher Lasch, who had become very famous with his books. One of the books during the Bill Clinton, his American Bill Clinton presidency, was The Culture of Narcissism. It was an idea that Christopher Lasch introduced. I mean, talking about Bill Clinton and the American politics, is now become a daily word to describe, 30 years later, Donald Trump with his malignant narcissism that is taking not only America, but the world to the edge of a nuclear showdown, and everything else surrounding this catastrophe that many of us now see. happening. But in 2019, there were few of us, much fewer than what it is today, as you do your Saturday night podcast, RB. uh, there's more people who have been paying attention to this, these matters. Um, and so we were people who came together, and for that, uh, I think Maxime Bernier has earned a place in Canadian history. Whether he gets re-elected to the parliament, whether PPC survives, or he just again passes out of history, as so many others like ourselves are going to pass out, and our memories will remain with the kinship that we establish. That Mark, for instance, we're talking about Mark, we are celebrating Mark and commemorating his role in the life of the country, in the life of his community in Saskatchewan during this period, 2019, 2026. That kinship will remain and he will be always be treasured. But coming back to Maxime, I think, Maxime's contribution will be he tried to bring together people who had become dispirited, people who had given up on politics, people who had stopped voting. I mean, how many Canadians now are aware, that was less aware in 2019, that somewhere between 37 and 40% of the country do not vote anymore? That 37 to 40% of the country can make a majority party if they voted for a party,
Yeah.
because
they've checked out. They've checked out. They don't care anymore. They've lost hope.
Yeah, if they've lost hope, they feel betrayed. There is the impoverishment that has gone on. We are supposed to be one of the richest country in the world. I don't mean only in a material sense, but in the sense that God and nature has gifted Canada with water, with trees and lumber, with minerals, with the vastness of the territory, 5 time zone, second largest country in the world in terms of territory, and yet we are doing so poorly, not because of the lack of resources, not because of the lack of possibilities and potential that has been gifted to us by, as I said, God and nature, but by the people who are running this country. And the people who are running this country, the political elite, they have very consciously chosen a path not to, make the country prosperous for its people, but to impoverish the country, in effect, impoverish the people. And that is the betrayal that was moving people in 2019, and there was that unrest, the convoy movement, the Yellow Vest movement. I mean, I saw the videos of Mark on the Yellow Vest movement in 2019 going on, the whole issue of carbon tax, CO2, these all, it goes all the way back to the debate that began the Kyoto Protocol in the 1992 Earth Summit in Rio, Brazil, where the discussion was introduced on the question of carbon dioxide.
Okay, and that's perfect, Salim, and that sets up Bob for on a platter. I wanted you to take it here from, because you're in Alberta and you saw all that was going on and what was happening, and how how you guys in Alberta, the economic engine of this bloody country, for since the founding of this country, have been used and abused like a redheaded stepchild, and still to this day, whenever you try to stand up for yourself, you get slapped down again, and it continues to happen. And I wanted your perspective on that and how Mark helped you see it.
This might take a while, but
it's okay. We got time.
Salim, I was still with the United Conservative Party in 2019. I was still very naive, and not that I was a fan of Harper. Harper lost my support, and it was interesting. My first conversation with Kenny, I picked him up at the airport in Peace River, so I had one-on-one with him. And I had been collecting or getting memberships and whatnot. I got involved in politics because I was mad at the NDP, I was mad at the Liberals for the failed pipelines, for the carbon taxes and all that garbage. I grew up in poverty, my family did, and it was oil and gas that lifted all of us up substantially. My wife and I did very well, we worked hard, and it was the end of 2014, we retired, we sold our business interest. And the UCP had my full-time energy, my passion. So they had this grassroots guy, this Métis, this blue-collar Albertan. And I dove in. And my first conversation with Kenny, I handed him an envelope. And what it was 20 point form questions, concerns, criticisms, some of Kenny. One of them was immigration. And so he read through it very quickly. And I realized in the moment how astute he is. He said, this is amazing. I need more of this. I always need to know what the people are thinking, he said. And I took it as a good thing, right? I took it, he cares. But all he wanted, in hindsight, it is what they want to know what we think so that they know what to say at the podium. But anyways, one of the points was that I made to him, and before I started going, he said, I want you to expand on this point here, free vote. What do you mean by this? And I said, well, I'm sick and tired of your inner circle power. You have a select few in your inner circle. You make all the decisions. You whip all of the other elected representatives, MPs and MLAs. I said, that's not conservatism, that's fascism. And I said, Harper lost my support when he started ruling with an iron fist. Anyways, that was the conversation. And then they got, they were elected, and very quickly the alarm bells started going off. And the first time they went off was when he was being interviewed about the emissions cap on oil sands. And the reporter asked him, are you going to repeal that? And he said, no, that's not important right now. Next question. And that got that got me fired up. And then other things too, the nepotism. They're hiring friends and paying them way too much money for these positions. And one of those positions was the energy war room, which I was very passionate about. And I called it out behind the scenes like I did. And I had Doug Schweitzer, who was the Minister of Justice. It was his buddy that ended up getting the job. And I demanded a meeting with Doug, and I got it. But who cares, right? I mean, this is behind the scenes. And I thought I was doing a good thing. And then COVID happened. And then I was really upset, really angry. And my first communication to Kenny in the inner circle, because I didn't only have time with Kenny after that. I had time with the chief of staff, with key strategists. So Jamie Huckabee was the chief of staff, and Nick Koolsbergen was another guy that I talked to a lot. And when COVID happened, that's when I really started getting upset. And one of my words to them was, you guys are being fascists. You're full-on fascists right now. And to my fellow board members, because I was on the board, and I tried to reason with them, and I said, listen, there's a societal war going on out there. I think our jobs is a go-between the people and the government. And I'd go to my fellow board members, and 5 of them in particular said, Bob, I have a government contract. I'm like, what are you doing here then? Well, it's self-serving, right? And I, again, being naive, thought everybody was there for the right reasons. Anyways, May 14th, my first communication the day before was laced with F-bombs. I was very angry. That night, I took my time, and I poured my heart out. And it was very lengthy, and I sent it to all the UCP CAs across the province. I sent it to all the MLAs. And then on May 14th, I handed in my resignation because I knew that I wasn't going to make any headway there. There was too many people still supporting. There were bootlickers. They were still protecting the party at all costs. So I knew I had to walk away. And then it was Halloween night. This was part of, I'm going to tell the story. I tell it all the time in person. So it was one of these moments where I'm reading a letter from Archbishop Diagono to Donald Trump, warning Trump about this great reset. And I was just learning about this stuff. I didn't know anything about this before, the UN agenda and all this stuff. So I'm halfway through the letter, and it was just like thunder in my mind. Jamie Huckabee, boom. And I'm like, okay. I clickety-click. Half hour later, I have all the history of where Jamie came from. I put a link to my document, everything I've learned in the last 6.5 years, plus Mark's information. I just compiled it all, and I have live links throughout. So one of those is Jamie Huckabee. Well, Jamie Huckabee, and this was my eye-opener to the Uniparty of Canada. Dan Williams became our MLA. Dan Williams was a 6-year staffer with Kenny when Kenny was in Ottawa as a minister. Dan Williams was in the Suburban when I picked up Kenny that day at the Peace River Airport, and then he was parachuted into our riding. So Dan told me the day that Jason took the leadership of the UCP, this is his quote, that this Jamie Huckabee paused his very lucrative private sector career to come back to Alberta to help. And I thought, what a good guy. What a good Albertan coming back to Alberta to help. And that was Halloween night. I realized where he came from. He was with an organization out of New York City, a think tank, and the vice president from 2010 to 2015, and then back to Alberta. On the board of directors of that organization with Jamie was Barack Obama's former campaign manager, Hillary Clinton's former campaign manager, the National Democratic Committee leader, and a gentleman by the name of Joseph Stiglitz. Klaus Schwab has nothing on this guy. One of these really high-ranking globalists, whatever, chief economist at the World Bank, World Economic Forum since the early 90s, the top economic strategist for President Bill Clinton, high-level commission on carbon, like one of the guys, the architects. And then it was from that point on that I really wanted to know what the heck was going on. Like, how did this happen in Canada? And then that's finding Mark. He's putting the puzzle pieces together for me very quickly. And I'm just like, he's resonating with me because I'll just tell a quick side story on my walk through the political arena. My last foray into party politics was the Independence Party. That was torpedoed from the inside. 90 days before the general election, they removed Artur Pawlowski as leader. The same playbook that the Wild Rose used on Paul Hinman, revoked his membership. And we had an absolute grassroots groundswell, and they knew it. So they took him out, and it was just this peace over me that party politics is done. So then I called Artur right away. There was no hesitation on my part. I'm like, I'm done. I'm walking away, just so you know, you got my support. And then I pivoted over to an independent candidate, and I stuck with that. I was done with party politics for many reasons, just seeing the worst of people come out, even grassroots people, just the spiritual war that people go through and they lose. And so when I pivoted over to an independent candidate, immediately the phone starts ringing. And there was a young woman named Angela Tyback. She partnered with Kathy Flett. They were involved in the Wild Rose before. So they asked me to join a meeting with them to form a coalition of independent candidates, right? So I said, sure. So we go on the Zoom meeting, and immediately Kathy's talking about how we won't be, as a group, we can't criticize Daniel Smith. We can't criticize Rachel Notley. And I'm like, whoa. Time out here. This is the same thing that the board of the Independence Party was trying to tell me. Mark was never that. He always, so I asked Angela the question, when you do a town hall, do you give your audience the truth and nothing but the truth? Oh no, Bob, I read the room first. I said, we're done. And that wasn't Mark, ever. Mark was not a politician. He was far above, like he was a statesman, he was a community leader, and he poured the truth out no matter how much flack he took for it.